Welcome back to the Fantasy Price Check. Today we're going to be talking about whether you should be drafting JK Dobbins. If this is your first time here, let me tell you what we do. We do ADP price checks, and we grade players' ADPs based upon whether they are overpriced, underpriced, or fairly priced, and today we're getting into JK Dobbins. Before we get into JK Dobbins, I need to ask you guys for a favor. Hit that subscribe button down below to help keep this channel growing. Let's get into JK Dobbins. JK Dobbins is currently the 34th running back being drafted off the board. He's currently being drafted after Jordan Howard and Marlon Mack and ahead of Sony Michel, James White, and Matt Breida. As the 84th overall player off the board, he's being drafted right at the 7-8 turn. This spot in the draft is RB4 territory. Hopefully, through the first 6 rounds of the draft, you have 3 running backs. So at this point in the draft, you have to be thinking whether you want to draft for upside or if you want to draft a safe guy that you're able to plug into your roster for bye weeks or for injuries. JK Dobbins is an upside play. Jordan Howard is a safe floor play. If you drafted 3 running backs that you feel really good about, I would shoot for that upside and draft JK Dobbins as your running back 4. However, if you drafted a running back with injury concerns like James Conner, Chris Carson, or David Johnson, you're going to want to draft a guy like Jordan Howard due to his more consistent, reliable carry volume. So let's talk about why you'd want to draft JK Dobbins over guys with more guaranteed rushing volumes like Jordan Howard. JK Dobbins is not just a high value handcuff, he has standalone value even to start the season. I generally don't like to draft handcuffs because it's usually a waste of a bench spot. JK Dobbins doesn't need an injury to Mark Ingram to be fantasy relevant, but if Mark Ingram misses time, JK Dobbins is immediately an RB1. With other handcuffs like Alexander Mattison, there needs to be an injury to Dalvin Cook in order for him to be fantasy relevant. When Dalvin Cook is healthy, there is never going to be a week when you're playing Alexander Mattison. If Dalvin Cook never gets hurt, Alexander Mattison is a complete waste of a bench spot. Let's talk about what this Ravens backfield could look like and what I'm expecting JK Dobbins' season to look like. Mark Ingram is a starting running back for the Ravens, and I'm not expecting him to lose his job. I expect Mark Ingram to be the lead back for the Ravens the entire season. This is a crowded backfield, but there's enough room for JK Dobbins to have decent enough volume. The Ravens run the football a ton, 596 times to be exact, with Lamar Jackson accounting for 176 of those carries. The Ravens running backs had 393 carries last year. Mark Ingram had 202, Gus Edwards had 133, and Justice Hill had 58. Mark Ingram only played half of the Ravens snaps, and I'm expecting that to be the same this year. I would pencil Mark Ingram in for another 200 carries. I'm also expecting Lamar Jackson to run a little bit less, which should result in more carries going to the running backs. The question that I have on my mind is how the remaining 200 or so carries are going to be distributed between JK Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill. Gus Edwards had a pretty solid season last year. He's had roughly 130 carries and 700 yards in each of the last 2 seasons with a solid 5.3 yards per carry average. He's also a big back. He's 6'1", 238 pounds. Even though Gus Edwards has been solid, I'm expecting JK Dobbins to be the guy that the Ravens turn to when they need to relieve Mark Ingram. Gus will probably be the Ravens' 4th quarter guy when they're sitting on a lead and ready to close out the game. JK Dobbins is clearly the second running back on this depth chart based upon his talent, draft capital, and what he's able to do as a receiver. JK Dobbins has solid skills as a receiver. In college, he had 71 receptions for 645 yards, which is right up there with DeAndre Swift. We'll have to see what happens to Justice Hill. I'm expecting him to make the Ravens roster, but he may be cut if the Ravens only decide to roster 3 running backs. People that don't want to draft JK Dobbins just see a crowded backfield and decide to pass. I get that, but it's not something that I'm too concerned about. If you're looking at 400 running back carries to go around, you're looking at 200 for Mark Ingram, 100 to 125 for JK Dobbins, leaving 75 to 100 for Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. I would hope that JK Dobbins gets a larger cut of that share, but we don't know how the Ravens are going to distribute the carries. If that's what this backfield looks like, that means that JK Dobbins is only getting 6 to 8 carries per game and maybe 1 to 3 receptions. You can't start JK Dobbins if he's only going to get 8 to 10 touches per game. On average, that's going to only result in 40 to 50 yards. The narrative that you need to buy in order to get behind JK Dobbins is a second half breakout narrative. Mark Ingram is 30 years old. He's going to wear down late in the season. He's coming off a calf injury that he suffered this past December, and the Ravens are probably going to be looking to reduce his workload later in the season. That could mean more touches for JK Dobbins as we get into November and December. What I'm hoping for is that JK Dobbins' touches go from 6 to 8 touches in the first half of the season to 12 to 15 touches in the second half of the season. If JK Dobbins is getting 12 to 15 touches even with a healthy Mark Ingram, he's going to be startable as an RB2 or as a flex. And if Mark Ingram ever misses games, JK Dobbins is an immediate RB1. If you're drafting JK Dobbins, you need to be patient. You're probably not starting him at all during the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season. You're going to have to wait until the second half of the year before he's a useful fantasy asset. Dobbins is a pure wait and see, let's hope for upside late in the season pick. You simply don't get that upside with the guys that are being drafted around him like Matt Breida and James White. Another quick tip for you guys, if you don't land JK Dobbins in the draft, after about 4 weeks, if he gets off to a slow start, start sending out some trade offers and hope that you get him before the breakout happens. After JK Dobbins is off the board, there are not many running backs after round 8 that I could get excited about other than Zach Moss. I currently have JK Dobbins as my RB32, which is 2 spots ahead of his ADP. JK Dobbins is fairly priced. Don't expect much from him during the first half of the season. Wait for the second half breakout. Round 8 is where you want to be drafting him. Guys, if you enjoyed this price check, give it a thumbs up. I got 2 more for you. I'm going to throw up the price checks for DeAndre Swift and Zach Moss, so be sure to check those out. And don't forget to subscribe below. I'll see you guys on the next one.